Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to go through cockpit familiarization, engine startup, and takeoff in the DCS F-16. Alright, coming down here to the lower left console, we got pitch, roll, yaw trim. Want to make sure those are just centered up. We've got the IFF master mode panel right here. External lighting panel. You can change things like anti-collision light patterns, position lights, flash or steady. You got a master switch, formation light, dimmer. This is the EPU, emergency power unit. It comes on automatically if the main engine fails and provides backup power to hydraulics and avionics. We got the master battery switch here and the caution reset button. If you find you accidentally did something in the startup out of order and you've got a caution that won't go away, this button might solve your problem down here. Alright, we got the ECM, electronic countermeasures. If you're carrying a pod, you're going to use this panel to help control it. We've got volumes here for comms and things like the ILS receiver, TACAN. This is a backup radio. This is the jet fuel starter, normal start, stun on start 2. Chaff flare slap switch lets you run a different program 5 on your chaff flares. We've got the countermeasures control panel right here, RWR power panel, and you got some controls for the RWR down here. This big yellow thing is the canopy lock. Right here we got the ejection seat, either disarmed or armed. Landing lights, stores config switch, Cat 1s for air-to-air loadout, Cat 3s for air-to-ground loadout. It's going to limit your roll rate and angle of attack in Cat 3, just to keep the aircraft from departing controlled flight. We got emergency storage jettison button. If you push this, it's going to blow off all your fuel tanks and air-to-ground ordnance. You'll be left with just air-to-air ordnance. Autopilot control switches right here. You got pitch altitude hold mode, attitude hold, and then roll attitude hold. Or you can do heading select or steering select where it'll go to 0 points. Master arm switch, the laser arm switch. This light right here for ECM lights up if the countermeasure pod's transmitting. Got your RWR and some switches to control that. The ICP, DED right here, data entry display. Obviously the HUD. Coming down here we got altimeter, and you can change the altimeter setting here. I think it's 29 or 89 at this field right now. We got a backup airspeed, angle of attack indicator, vertical velocity indicator, attitude indicator. This is the EHSI, I believe, electronic horizontal situation indicator. This M button here changes the modes, and these two right here change like course and heading. This is the fuel quantity select panel. You just leave that on normal. It'll work automatically. Coming up here we got fuel flow, and that's big and up front. That's going to be your primary means of setting power. Oil pressure for the engine, nozzle position for the engine, RPM for the engine, a turbine inlet temperature gauge for the engine, backup whiskey compass. We got the fuel quantity gauge and the important numbers right here. That's going to tell you how much fuel you got left on board. We got like a caution warning panel down here, hydraulic pressures, EPU fuel for that emergency power unit. That thing runs off of a chemical called hydrazine, and from my understanding it goes for 10 to 15 minutes. We got sensor power switches down here. So left hard point is going to be your harm sensor, harm targeting sensor. Right hard point is going to be targeting pod, FCR, fire control radar, and then radar altimeter here. 2 clicks up for that one. These switches here, control functions on the HUD. You can do things like change the airspeed display from like calibrated to true to ground speed. Leave calibrated standard. DED data is kind of cool. That is going to take the data off the DED right here and display it on the bottom of the HUD. We got interior lighting panel, air conditioning, which I don't really mess with. Just leave it on auto and normal. Oxygen panel, nothing to mess with there, just leave it on normal. And then the avionics power switches, which we will turn on when we start up. Alright, so let's get the airplane fired up. First thing I want to do, and I kind of like to go from left to right on this, just like I did in that little preview. First thing to do is turn on the main power. Jet fuel starter to start 2. I go ahead and close the canopy, Control C for that. And lock it. Now we're waiting on 20% RPM down here. Alright, we have just over 20% RPM, so I'm going to go right shift home. And that's going to put the engine from cutoff to idle and add fuel. So you see we got temperature increase, light off, RPM's rising. There we go. Alright, we'll start turning stuff on now. So the IFF is going to go to normal. This stuff is all good. Turn on the RWR. Go ahead and set my countermeasures to manual. Flares, chaff on. I like program 3. Turn this stuff on. We don't have an NWS. I don't think this switch even does anything. Arm the ejection seat. Landing lights, we turn those on. Stores, Cat 3, we got an air to ground loadout. Master arm, we'll just leave that as is, off. Coming up here, we're going to want to turn on the HUD. And that'll come on when we get the rest of the power on, but if you want to move this, this is like the dimmer for it. Move it off of the bottom. Coming down here. I'm going to turn on our power. Left, right, hard point, fire control radar, radar altimeter. Come back here to the avionics power, go story heading, and then turn everything on. Mids LVT, we're going to turn that on too. Alright, so now alignment has started, and you can see this time here is ticking down. And when it gets to 10 and everything starts flashing, that's when we know we've done a full alignment. Alright, so we see ready is now solid, and basically I think what that means is a course alignment has been completed. So we could go ahead and go into nav mode and take off if we wanted to. However, we do want to wait for this to get down to 10 seconds and the full alignment procedure to complete. Alright, so ready is flashing, align is flashing in the HUD. Alignment procedure is complete, so I'm going to flip this over to nav. There we go. Alright, so we're going to bring the dauber left here. Bring the data entry display back to the main page. Next thing I want to do is set bullseye. We'll use steer point 2 as bullseye, so I'm going to hit list. Miss 0. 8 for bull. Bullseye. Set steer 2. And then you want to enable that by selecting it right here and then hit M cell 0Q. Now that's highlighted and our bearing and distance from bulls is displayed right here. Alright, one more thing to take care of. We're going to go ahead and line up the helmet mounted cueing system. So I just turned it on there by turning that knob. That's like the dimmer for it. We went to the list page. Back to miscellaneous, R for HMCS, that's going to be the recall button. Dauber right down here to get to the alignment, and hit M cell for course alignment. Just going to line these two up, and then I'm going to press on the HOTAS the radar cursor enable switch. There we go, align OK, and I'll hit M cell here again. And you can go through these other two modes. I find you don't really have to do it. These are pretty well lined up from the start. You can use the radar cursor switch to slew this around. until it's lined up perfectly. Hit M cell again. There we go. Alright, alignment's completed. Cool, and we're ready to taxi. So to turn on the nose wheel steering, we're going to press the NWS AR disconnect button, and that's something on your HOTAS that you can bind. But you'll see right here the NWS is going to come on, nose wheel steering. Add a little power, and away we go. Alright, approaching the runway here. We're going to go ahead and line up. Alright, a few things to pay attention to in the HUD really quick. So we've got no rad at the top. That's just because we are weight on wheels and the radar is automatically off. This cross right here, I think that's called the dynamic aiming cross. This basically represents the attitude of the aircraft. This is where the nose of the aircraft is pointing. And that's different from the flight path marker in that the flight path marker shows where you're going. And that can, you know, if you're going slow, that could be, or pulling G's, it could be different from where your aircraft's actually pointing. I've got airspeed on the left here. And the technique for takeoff, we're going to go full throttle, full afterburner. Using the rudder to stay lined up with the runway center line or left or right, depending if you're doing like a formation takeoff or something like that. We're going to deselect the nose wheel steering at about 70 knots. And between 150 and 170 knots, depending on how heavy we are, we're going to go ahead and rotate the aircraft, so pull back on the stick. And we're going to want to set this dynamic aiming cross right here to 12 degrees nose up. So you'll see a 10 degrees line, and you want to just set it just above that. As soon as we're off the runway, we got a positive rate of climb. We'll pull the gear up, and then once we hit 350 knots, pull it out of afterburner. Continue accelerating to 350 knots, and then pitch up to maintain 350 knots in the climb. All right, let's get going. So full afterburner. Nose wheel steering off. We're heavy, so I'm going to go ahead and start pulling back here a little bit above 150. I'm looking for just 12 degrees pitch up. There it is, and we're off the runway. Gear's coming up. I'm just going to hold that right there until that flight path marker hits about 5 degrees, and then I'm going to start pitching down to stay there. 300 knots out of afterburner. I'm just staying at 5 degrees here, accelerating. To 350 knots for the climb. Alright, once we're climbing out, we can use this fuel flow gauge to manage fuel flow and pitch for about 350 knots. You can also use this turbine inlet temperature gauge. If you're flying formation with a couple of buddies, you might want to pull that back to like 850 degrees. Just so they have some room. You don't want to be climbing out at full military power, because anyone trying to keep up with you then is going to be in and out of afterburner trying to stay on your wing. Alright, thanks a lot for watching, guys. I hope this was helpful. I'm going to continue this little tutorial series in the future, so if you like what you see, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks again.